This demo is going to be a demo of creating branches in Git. Now, if you want to create a branch in Git, there's at least 3 different ways to do it using Azure DevOps and Azure Repos. So the way we're going to do it here in this demo is that we're going to start with a local branch and push it to the remote server. You also can create a branch from a work item, or you could just create a branch remotely up on Azure DevOps and then sync it down locally. Now, if that sounds confusing, it's because we haven't really talked about local versus remote branches. So I'll talk about that in this demo. So we'll start with a local branch, and we're going to publish that branch up to Azure Repos, and then we're going to merge changes between branches. Okay, let's do a demo of creating a branch in Visual Studio. So let's say that someone has asked us to do some work. In this particular case, make a change to Hello World so that it displays date and time when it runs. So before we start implementing that feature and implementing those changes, let's create the branch. A great way to do that is to come down here, click on the name of the current branch that we're on, in this case main. It brings up this menu right here, and let's click on New Branch. Let's give it a name. We'll call it Display Time, and click the Create button. We are now working in the context of the Display Time branch, and you can see that down here and also here in the Git Changes window. Okay, I'm going to make a few changes to this code. Okay, so I've made those changes, and now we have this. Instead of having just one file, we've got 3 files: iDateTimeProvider.cs, localDateTimeProvider.cs, and program.cs. LocalDateTimeProvider.cs is nothing fancy. It just implements iDateTimeProvider, gets the current time as a string, and returns it. For a Hello World demo, this is needlessly complicated, but the whole idea is I'm trying to add some complexity to the version control scenario to make it a little bit more realistic. And then back in program.cs, we call it, output that value, and we have the implementation. So let's go back to the Git Changes window. And right here we see that we have 3 outgoing changes. But let's go take a look at the web interface for Azure DevOps. So in Repos, we've got this section that says Branches. If we go to Branches, it shows us the list of branches that are controlled by me. Let's go to All Branches, and we don't see that branch. So what's going on? Back down in Visual Studio, let's click on View All Commits. And on the left-hand side, we've got the list of branches that Visual Studio and Git know about. Right now, we can see, because it's bolded, that we're on Display Time. And there are 3 changes that need to go out. But let's open up this Remote Origin folder. And this right here says, well, there's only one remote branch. Remember, there's a difference between what's on our local machine and what's available on the server. And in this case, this branch isn't replicated up to the server, so the server doesn't know about it. No one else knows about it. It only exists on this machine. So we can make all kinds of changes here locally inside this branch, and no one has to know about them. We can do all kinds of stuff, and when we're ready to share those changes, or if we just want to back it up to the server, well, one of the things we can do is we can go over here and say push. That'll push all the changes. So let's do a push. Push finished, and now under remotes in this folder, it's showing that Display Time is also now a remote branch as well. And if we go to the web interface, let's hit refresh on this. Now we see that Display Time exists as a branch up on the server, and we can look at the history and changes that we made inside of this, just like we can do for any other part of our source control repository. So notice the list of changes we have right here. Create datetime provider interface, added local datetime provider implementation, added datetime display to Hello World. Let's change from the Display Time branch to main. In main, those changes don't exist. Now right here we have this thing saying, hey, you updated the Display Time branch 2 minutes ago. Do you want to create a pull request? Let's ignore this for right now. I'll do a pull request demo later on in this module. Back in Display Time, basically we have changes that we want to share back to main. So every branch implies a merge. So you create a branch, do some work in it, and when you're happy with it, when you want to share the changes from that branch to everybody else, you do a merge. So coming back down into Visual Studio, One of the things I do when I want to do a merge is I want to change to the context of the branch that I'm merging into. In this case, I want to merge from display time back to main. So let's double click on this, and now we're in the context of main. To do a merge from display time, go to that branch, right click, and one of the options right here is merge display time into main. So let's choose that. Let's do a build just to make sure it's still good. It's fine, we're happy with it. And at this point we can share our merge back to the server. And all we have to do for that is do a push. Back up on the server, let's switch over to main. And now main is in sync with display time. So that's a quick demo of branching and merging using Visual Studio. Next up, let's talk about how branches help you with code reviews. And this brings us to the topic of pull requests.